Okay, so here is what I have for my final Centipede submission. So, spiders come in, fleas drop, scorpions run across. Here's a bug that I kept running into. If the player dies and they still, before they respawn, if they still try to put any movements in or do any input on the keyboard, then it triggers this breakpoint. But okay, so let's see what I do have. I have flea here. It behaves the way that the flea should. Drops make sure that it's not just continuously dropping mushrooms wherever. It's actually putting them into grid positions. Yeah, with this, I keep a pointer to the mushroom field inside the flea so that it can call its new mushroom function, which puts a mushroom actually inside the grid and keeps the pointer there so that the centipede will recognize that it's there. The flea has 2 health. When it collides with a bullet twice, it breaks, and the sounds all play. Scorpion here behaves the way that the scorpion should. It spawns on either the left or right side of the screen at some random point and towards the top half of the field. It runs across, it plays its sounds. When it gets shot, it dies. And the collision functionality with the mushrooms to make them poison isn't actually in the scorpion, because that's kept inside the mushroom to deal with it. But I do have an empty collision with the mushroom here to make sure that they actually do register with each other. Next is the spider. Excuse me. So this one, it doesn't behave fully the way that the spider should. Its movements aren't quite as randomized as the spider in the game. I didn't end up with the time to go back and make its movement fully as accurate as it could be, which would just be putting some more functions in there for moving it and giving it a little more complex logic to choose between how it moves. If it goes outside the screen, then it gets marked for destroy. If it collides with a mushroom, it destroys it. And again, like the scorpion, the functionality for that is actually inside the mushroom. Plays its sound and mutes it when it dies. Down here, it calculates its points the way that it should. The closer it is, the more points you get for it. Score manager is a singleton that I'll get to in a bit. But yeah, when it dies, it mutes its sounds. It gets destroyed off screen. Yeah, all of the collisions with the blaster are also kept inside the blaster too. All of the functionality for that. So there's just a comment to make sure that that's what we know what it's for. Centipede body is just a duplicate from the head, as you probably saw in the video, but the head is actually running the way that it should have been the whole time on a movement queue now. There's a lot of functions that take care of how to move it around. I didn't quite get having it rotate up inside the player space so it would actually come back and around. So that didn't make it in, but I do have the function there for if I had been able to. It looks ahead into the mushroom field, which I'll get to. Collides with the bullet and kills it, and spawns a mushroom in the position that it gets destroyed in. There's a little bit of logic there to make sure that it's not, or to make sure that it's actually spawning in front of the centipede instead of in front of the centipede that gets killed instead of behind it. Because that was something that happened to me for a while back. But now we'll get into the mushroom. Its initialize function makes sure that whenever it gets spawned, that it looks the way that it should, with full health and unpoisoned. The update is just to make sure that the sprite is drawing the way that it should. Collision with the bullet lowers its health and shows the damage on it, and dependent on whether it's poisoned or not, which sprite set it's using. If it dies, it adds points. I made a dereference mushroom function for the mushroom field, so that the pointer actually gets set to null, which is something I'm pretty proud of, because I was running into this problem where the centipede was moving down when it shouldn't be, and for the longest time I thought it was a bug in my look ahead function, but it was because after I destroyed a mushroom, the cell array wasn't being told that the mushroom was destroyed, and so the centipede would still see that there was something there with the way that the look ahead function worked. But now when it dies, it actually sets it to null, and now the centipede doesn't see anything there anymore. Yeah. The field otherwise is, the same as it's always been. There's the spawn function up there. The update and draw, those are there because when I initially tried to implement this, I just did it as a plain class instead of a game object, and it just, for some reason, it just didn't work. But so I had to make it a game object, and then it was throwing bugs. Teal was throwing bugs back at me, saying that the update and draw functions weren't. It was trying to draw something empty, so I just gave them little empty functions to overwrite whatever Teal was trying to do on its own. Look ahead, it's the same as it's always been. Checks if the next position, that the grid position that the centipede is going to be in is has a mushroom in it or not, and returns a bool for it. The poison check, I had this working before I came up with the cue for the centipede, but it's Now that it's on a queue, it didn't work the same, so I had to scrap it. Let's see, now the wave manager isn't really fully a wave manager. It's more of a critter manager, I guess. I didn't get the read from file in, so it just handles the lives, the blaster and mushroom field creation. There's a little spawn centipede function that comes in here to make sure that there's a centipede being spawned, which is a simple little algorithm that just creates a head and then a number of segments behind it and at a certain position. Yeah, right here. And otherwise, the spider and the scorpion are handled by alarms. The flea is a little more complex. It does use alarms, but it's only triggered in the mushroom field by a trigger function that's a callback when a mushroom gets decremented. When the mushroom count gets decremented, then the flea gets instantiated, but it makes sure that it doesn't spawn another one for a number of seconds, because before I would just have like waves of fleas that came down after the alarm got triggered, because it would after the flea trigger was called, because it would just keep calling it every frame that those mushrooms weren't or that the mushroom count was below what it was looking for. I made this new mushroom function so that things that contained a pointer to the mushroom field would be able to spawn a new mushroom once, if they needed to, like the centipede head and the bodies. Where is it? Right here. So when they die, they show they spawn a new mushroom in front of them. Let's see, I have factories for everything, and they're all singletons. But so that new mushroom function was mostly to make sure that the mushroom field created a new pointer to the mushroom that was being instantiated, since the factory is a singleton. I could have just made it from anywhere, but I didn't. But here's the score manager. It's just a simple function that adds to the score. If your points get over 12,000, then you get an additional life. As you can see, I tried doing the HUD, didn't quite work out. So here's the blaster. I defined the starting lives here, but that was back when I was handling the lives in the blaster instead of the wave manager. But I just used a clamp tool to keep it in place. There's movement controls that get called, which that was done that way in the hopes of getting the AI blaster in, so I'd be able to call these movement functions around, but that obviously didn't make it in. The firing mechanic has been the same that it's been since the beginning. There's a bool for a flag that gets switched off as soon as you shoot, And then in the bullet, once the bullet goes off screen, this function here gets called inside that, since every bullet keeps a pointer to the blaster. So once the bullet gets destroyed or recycled, it calls this function to tell the blaster that it's able to shoot again. As you see here, every collision function has the set shot back, or callback to let the blaster know it can shoot again. And then it plays its shot sound. Collides with the mushroom, the blaster just stays in its spot. If it collides with any of the critters, the wave manager drops a life off. It deletes the blaster and creates an explosion animation there. So it actually has player death, which isn't something that I had for a while. Speaking of the explosion, here it is. We have pretty simple, just plays the animation, and once the animation is completed, it creates a new blaster at its starting position. If the wave manager says that it has enough lives to. Excuse me. Otherwise, it was supposed to trigger the game reset, which I was clueless on how to do it. I tried doing the change scene thing, but that was just throwing all kinds of errors, so I just left it as it is. As it is now, if the player runs out of lives, then it just doesn't spawn again, and the game just carries on as if you had never left. It'll throw that input event manager error if you try and move or shoot or do anything the same way you would do if it was playing the explosion before you died. So I think that's it for what I have. What I was missing was the HUD, obviously, the startup screen with the AI blaster, the two-player mode, the wave manager reading from file, and then the centipedes being linked to each other and being able to move back and forth through the movement space. But besides that, I've gotten most everything else. Wow, the list doesn't sound that long beforehand.